When you did the audio book, did you get emotional listening to each other, reading from it?
I didn't get emotional listening to Tegan do the audiobook. I did think it was funnier than... like, I thought her contributions to the book are wonderful. I'm so proud of the book. I don't mean it to sound, shitty. I found hearing Tegan's voice telling the stories made me laugh. It felt really fresh. It's not a sales pitch, but I do think there is something very specific about reading a book and hearing it in your own interior voice, and then to hear the actual author reading it is really special. Thank you.
Because there's this myth that twins always know what each other are thinking.
Yeah.
And despite the fact you guys are going through so many parallel things in this book, that you're going through them very separately.
Yeah. And I think that reading it was really incredible because we really got an insight to each other's interior world. But definitely listening to each other read it adds a whole other dimension too, because even the live performance, we've been doing these shows where we read and tell stories and play the songs, and hearing Sara read the stories, it's a whole other dimension to hear how she interacts with the audience and how she, even I don't know the intended tone of some of the stories, right? On the page, some things seem really funny to me or some things seem really serious, and we're editing in real time when we read live, because some things are not fucking funny and everybody laughs, and we're backstage afterwards being like, what the fuck? So it's cool how this continues to live. It grows. It's really neat. With a record, it's there's the record, but with the book it really is transforming everywhere we take it. So thanks for the question.
Okay.
I was going to ask kind of a silly question, but I'll ask what Sara said, I think. Anyway, Anne Frank's a big hero of mine, and it's kind of when I was at 19, she became a big hero. And I was just wondering if you've read Anne Frank's diary.
I think we read it in school. Yeah, I think it was sort of like one of those mandatory reads, and so and so absolutely, of course. It's really interesting though, because I think as young people, there's this sort of when you're forced to read something, or when you are sort of reading it within the sort of institution that you are sort of, well, at least I was a rebellious type, so I always found, the classics and sort of anything that was mandated for me to read, I sort of read out of obligation and trying to get good marks and whatever. And, for me, it was always important. I wanted to read. I wanted to go off the path. I wanted to be provocative. I remember bringing, my mom had Kiss the Spider Woman, which I have not read recently and could be entirely problematic, so I'll give that caveat, but I remember bringing it to school and displaying it on my desk because I wanted teachers to be like, now what's that? It was such, I knew as a young person it was very provocative for me to bring that into school, and it wasn't required reading, and it was it sort of was signaling to my teachers oh, I'm thinking about things that are outside of the context of, educational, whatever, suggested titles. But I think that anything to do with the Holocaust and anything to do with, that sort of part of our curriculum in high school, I remember it being really impactful. And there was the wave, was that a thing that was taught here as well? There was this film. Do you know what I'm talking about in history class? Where they separate students and they give them different groups to associate with, and then they sort of indoctrinate them with certain kind of propaganda statements. And at some point, it's a really wild documentary. It's sort of a very 1970s psychological experiment type film that most of the kids in my class were like, whatever, when's lunch? And I was just being humans are garbage! I'm terrified! And I remember being really, really captivated by that and scared, about it. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Let's go middle of the second row.
Hi. What did you find most challenging and what most rewarding about writing the book?
What do we find most challenging and what do we find most rewarding about the book? Well, kind of the same thing in a strange way for me. Writing the book was similar to how we write music. We did it completely separate from one another. We gave each other a lot of space. Once we had established the timeline for the book, and we created a fake table of contents that was sort of suggestions. So Sara sort of etched out what she thought she wanted to talk about, and then I did the same. And then we kind of just went off into our private worlds and wrote, and then, you know, every 5 weeks or something we would send the chapters we've been working on and then try to figure out how they fit together. And that was really great. It was really wonderful to have space to do that and to not be in each other's faces. And it's how we prefer to write music as well. Like I prefer to kind of almost like surprise, like, you know, send Sara music, and it was the same with the book. So that was really rewarding and exciting, because there's something really amazing about being alone for like 5 weeks at a time and writing, like this sense of accomplishment that I felt was really incredible. But that was also the hardest part. There's no reward. You know, with music, it's like, I can send Sara an MP3 and I can get feedback that night. You know, I can send it to a friend. I have a few trusted people I send music to, or my partner will come home and I'll play her a song, and it's like, look, I did something. I'm not a complete waste of time, you know. And with the book, it was hard. She would come home from work and I'd be like, can I read you this chapter? And she'd be like, yeah, sure. I prefer to read it on my own, and I'd be like, but I want to read it to you. Like, 'cause it's almost like I wanted to perform it, and yeah, it was hard. It was isolating at times, and also we were both so focused on our own side of the book, and this was the first time we'd done something like this, so I was like felt very obsessed with getting it right and getting it good, and the only person I was sharing it with really was Sara, and she wasn't giving me much feedback because she was also figuring out how to write a book. So we really, once our editors got involved, it got really exciting for me, because they took, our first draft was over 500 pages, and they cut it down by almost 40%. And when I did the read through, like, they were like, hope this is okay. And Sara and I were like, yeah! Like, fucking thrilled. Like, the story came alive. Like, it was like all the excess had been cut away. And it was like the margins were full of, like, you know, sometimes one word, like, excellent. And I would just be like, you know, it was really cool. So, but it was hard. I'm very isolated, and I don't know how writers do it all the time. It's definitely a lot, a long time.
Shall we go? What's going on? Middle of the front row.
We're really favoring the front here.
Okay.
No, you do.
Go.
Hi. Have any teachers or like outside family authority figures like read the book, and like what has their response been to it?
So the question is, have any authority figures or teachers read the book?
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting, because in the book I write about a couple of teachers who played quite a significant role in my early development, specifically the drama teacher, Mr. Russell, in the book, who everyone assumed and talked about being gay, and you know, he was really the only adult I had ever. I mean, there was like a few randos in my life that I remember being like, I think that person's gay. But like, I really felt that Mr. Russell was gay, and he really fit the stereotype. He was a drama teacher. He was very feminine. We would do the university drama festival every year, and he would hang out with all the other gay teachers, in my opinion, like at the drama festival, and we would all be like, you know, like watching them, and they were, anyways. But I hadn't really thought that much about him before we started writing the book. Like, I hadn't thought a lot about him in adulthood. And this is a bit of a downer, but he passed away after we got out of high school, a number of years after we got out of high school. And I was just filled with such grief when I was writing the book, because I never had an adult conversation with him. I never told him how significant it was to me that he cared about me, that he gave me opportunities that other teachers didn't. I wasn't an actor, but he could recognize in me, I think, that I was a performer and a writer. He gave me this opportunity when I was in grade 12. He asked me to write a script and submit it for the University Drama Festival, and I did, and I got into the drama festival, and I remember it was so profound to watch it be performed in front of a room of my peers from all over the school, or all over the city. And I just, I was a teenager. I just didn't have my wits about me at that point, and I would give anything to have a conversation with him now. I really would. I wish I could ask him about his experience as a queer man in the 90s teaching. I wish I could talk to him about the years I was in high school. I wish that I could have. This is a very sort of empathetic thing to think. I know I was a teenager, but somehow I feel like there was a part in writing the book where I felt like I could have been a better ally. Like, I feel like somehow I could have been somehow a support to him. It makes me really sad to think about him closeted in our school. So
he was married to and had children.
He had been in a relationship and had children and was no longer with that person, but he kept up a sort of facade, but we all knew it wasn't true, and I just wish it was different, and I hadn't thought about that in 2 decades. And as I started to write about him, I had never really put into words like how significant his existence had been, and yeah, and I like sometimes dream about him. He's like back in my lips, like he's back out of my subconscious, and like sometimes I'll think about him, and like it's so it's not really quite an answer, because the truth is that without being too dark, a lot of the most important teachers in my life have passed on actually from that time. It's been over 20 years, and a lot of those teachers were in their 50s and 60s. So I don't have that feedback, but he certainly would have been one of the adult figures that I would have loved to know him. Our broadcasting teacher from the book, a friend of ours ran into him a couple months ago, and
very different figure.
They took a selfie. He encouraged us. He's the one that let us record our first demo, so he takes a lot of credit, though. He was like, "Oh, I knew they were going to be famous." I love that. They took a selfie with our friend and was like, "Here's my business card. Tell him to call me." He's great. Yeah. A lot of teachers honestly just didn't see it. They just kind of were like, "Nah, whatever."
Beautiful. Thank you for your question.
Time for 2 more questions.
2 more. We're going to the middle-ish there, back-ish there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That one. Yeah.
Go.
So hard.
I was going to talk then. This seems to have been a different collaborations for you guys in a lot of ways. How do you think this will inform future collaborations between the two of you?
It's a great question, actually. I've been thinking about it and talking about it, that, for the book specifically, it really, I think, got us thinking outside of music, and I do think that there's going to be a lot of pursuing creative paths outside of music, so that's exciting. And I think the other thing that it did was when we found all the old music and we went into pre-production and then made our new record, we ended up kind of just whatever song inspired us most, we ended up recording, and so we aren't necessarily singing lead on our own songs, and that's the first time in our career that we've ever done something like that. And currently in our live show, we do sing each other's songs in a few cases. And so I'm really excited to see what happens next, because I'm curious. Like, there's been songs in our past that have not made a record because Sara wrote them and didn't want, like, was like, I'm not into it. And I would have never felt like creative license to say, well, could I take that song and work on it and make it my own? And I feel like this record has made me think that maybe we could do more of that and have a little more collaboration, and it might benefit our music. So I actually really am excited to see what the next era of Tegan and Sara is going to look like. I definitely think it's going to be different than what it's been.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Amazing. Let's give the back some love. This guy under the light at the back. Go.
First of all, you've got me with a lot of clear markets, I think. I think one of the things that I find really moving about the book is the representation that is so rare of the sanctity of life, particularly people who are queer young people like that. And I think that it's quite profound to see that representation in the book. And I wondered what it's like to talk about still carrying that, and that's still being with you, shame to be. And I wondered what it's like holding that alongside being people that people relate to and project on and want to mind so much of.
Great question, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this pressure culturally and socially that once you hit a certain age, you've left certain traumas or discomfort or homophobia or whatever it is that you've left in the past. And I think, for probably for positive reasons, for the good of the community and our own civil rights movement, like our right to gain certain laws or protections or whatever, there was this kind of like, let's all get on board and let's all celebrate these successes and let's all fight for the same things. And once we sort of check those boxes, there's this kind of like inertia of like, don't look back, don't be upset, do not be a sad gay person, don't talk about that, let's get on to the next thing. And one of the sort of like, it gets better, and it's like, which isn't to say it doesn't, and I'm not trying to like drag on like any of these like sort of like branded movements which were like once organic things and that happened really naturally, but like I think that it is okay for us to talk about in our community our feelings and the things that happen to us without turning ourselves into victims. We don't have to be victims. We can talk about our feelings and our insecurities and our traumas and our discomfort and our shame without also having to let go of like our fucking gay pride, world pride, whatever shit. Like, enjoy that. Get married, have bachelor parties, whatever you want. Like, I'm not trying to be like the angel of death for like gay fun stuff, but also like, if you want to feel shitty about stuff, go for it. Like, I don't fucking care. Like, you can have like a it gets better and also in parentheses, I still feel upset. Is that okay? Like, you know, like, go for it. I don't fucking care. Like, I know lots of straight people who feel shitty about their bodies and they're allowed to talk about it. Like, why can't we be proud of ourselves and also hate ourselves? Why can't we look at why we hate ourselves? Why can't we look at what makes us feel bad? Why can't we environmentally name and call out the things that make us not feel confident or comfortable or whatever it is? And I don't think, and this is not like, I'm not like, you know, I'm not trying to lecture or police anyone, but like, this book has made me realize that a lot of people, especially people in positions of power, believe that as queer people, everything's fine now. And if, you know, and for me, like Tegan said earlier, we have a lot of power, we have a lot of privilege, but we have spent the last 20 years talking to you. We have heard your stories, we have read your letters, we have seen you struggle,